It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators. The famous and not so famous. The controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here is Douglas Coleman.
Howdy-ho. Hey, welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. Nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Colin Flaherty is here today. Colin is an award-winning journalist, author, and YouTube video producer. His book, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, is an Amazon #1 bestseller, and his YouTube channel is going great guns. He's got thousands of subscribers, and his videos have received over 50 million views in total. So he will be up in just a few minutes. We've got a full show interview. Just a couple of quick announcements. Please check out our Patreon page. You say tomato, I say potato. It's at patreon.com/Douglas Coleman Show. We'd like to take the show to a 2-show-a-week format, but we need your help to do it. So any contributions you could make would be greatly appreciated. Even $1 a month will go a long way to helping us achieve our goal. The second thing is we've started a YouTube channel, which is not really anything about the show, but it's more about me. As some of you know, I do spend a lot of time in Thailand. I have a second home there. And I'm guessing that most people who listen to the show have never been to Thailand. So I thought I would just make some short video clips of the area. I don't live in a big city. I live in the rural areas up north, and it might be interesting for some people. It might be different for a lot of people. So I've started a YouTube channel. Until we get to 100 subscribers, we can't get a custom URL. So you'll have to go to the show page on YouTube, and then it's listed under featured channels. But you'll see it there. My picture is there. I'll try to do as many videos as I can. I've got a GoPro camera, and I was thinking I would just strap it on to my head and go drive around on the motorcycle or take the car out and go to various places around here. There's a lot of interesting places to see, so we'll see how that goes. We'll be right back with Colin Flaherty.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Acclaimed author of Garden, Jane Yates brings you the first book in a new trilogy, Octopus Pirate, a story of a foundling who has unusual talents, such as the ability to communicate with octopuses. As a baby, he was washed up on an island off the Scottish mainland. An eccentric former nun who lives alone with cats brings him up. He joins a circus and narrowly escapes plots against him, flees to Cornwall, builds a replica pirate ship that's also an airship to travel back in time to fight real pirates. Get your copy today from Amazon, only 99 cents.
Hi there, this is Stuart Epps from the UK, record producer, engineer. You might have heard of me. I've worked with artists from Elton John to Led Zeppelin to Bad Company, Twisted Sister, Robbie Williams, Oasis, many great bands and artists in the past and the present and hopefully in the future. But you can work with me as well. You know, all you got to do is get in touch with me on eppsmusicproductions.com. That's EWPSproductionsmusic.com. And I can help you with your productions and with your recordings. A lot of people do home recordings now, which you can only take so far. Maybe they need a bit of professional help. So get in touch with me and we can sort it out. And thanks for Douglas Coleman for giving me the spot. Thanks a lot. Cheers, bye.
Warning, the following episode deals with political and social commentary that some may find controversial. In a direct exercise of our First Amendment right to free speech, we here at the Douglas Coleman Show feel strongly that all Americans are entitled to express their political and social views. If you think that perhaps your feelings might be hurt by listening to this broadcast, then please do not listen to this show. Go to your safe space, put your fingers in your ears, and hum something to drown us out. For the rest of you, please enjoy the show, and remember, freedom means the right to peacefully disagree.
Okay, please welcome my guest, Colin Flaherty. Hi, Colin. How are you?
Hey, happy to be here.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I've watched some of your YouTube videos. I like what you do. I want to get into the videos and stuff in a minute, but before we get to those, if you could just give us a little background, I'd be curious. Maybe people don't know what you did before there was YouTube. So if you could just tell us a little of your background, and then we'll get to your videos.
Okay, well, I'm the author of a couple of books. I document black on white crime, black mob violence, black criminality, black on Asian, black on young, black on old, wildly out of proportion, all without racism, without rancor, without apologies. But that's half of it. The other half, I document how reporters and public officials are in denial, deceit, and delusion about this. So I also document that. And so I've got a couple books out there. My big book is Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. Lots of good reviews. Amazon #1 bestseller. And, so I started supplementing the book with videos, and the videos just took off. So that's how I got to here today.
Were you always a writer?
Yeah, I've been writing a long time. I was in the newspaper writing and magazine writing business for a long time. My biggest story, I won a bunch, over 50 journalist awards. My biggest story that I probably got the most recognition for on Court TV, NPR, LA Times, National News, I got a black guy out of prison after I showed he was wrongfully convicted for trying to kill his white girlfriend. That was a big deal.
Wow. How did you do that?
Well, he sent my editor a letter that said he didn't do anything. He was innocent. So when I got this letter, when I saw the letter, I thought, well, why don't we do just a real quick story about how people in prison that commit these horrible crimes are still lying their butts off about what got them into prison. Because there was one thing in the letter. It said, look, even at the trial, the judge said the main witness against me was lying. I said, that's impossible. That's not true. I got the transcripts of the hearing. There it is, the judge saying that at the sentencing. And so I showed that this crime never took place. He was convicted of trying to kill his white girlfriend. I showed the crime never took place. Then I showed that the woman who accused him of trying to kill her, she had tried to do the same thing with another boyfriend 1 year before. It was kind of a fatal attraction kind of deal. I actually thought that was going to end up in a TV movie somewhere. I had a big agent shopping it around and everything, but at the end of the process, they came back to me and they said, Colin, they don't really like that many movies where the woman is the villain. So I delayed my debut on the silver screen.
Oh, except for Fatal Attraction, which was a hugely popular, successful movie. And
you know what I learned about that movie, Fatal Attraction? It was kind of a documentary. I mean, that's how these things work. People meet. Some people meet. They have this intense attraction. There's a little bit of withdrawal. Then all of a sudden, there's a feeling of abandonment. Then all of a sudden, you get threats. And the famous quote is, "You can't just do this to me. You can't abandon me." And there's threats. There's harassment, vandalism, sometimes bogus legal action, violence, and sometimes even murder.
Well, it's interesting because I just find that excuse kind of lame from them, saying, well, we don't want to see the woman as the perpetrator. I mean, there's been many films that the woman was the bad one. But it was, not really. In movies, women are usually the victim. Not as much lately as it was a couple of years ago. But women are not the bad guys most of the time in these movies, especially when there's romance involved. Well, I guess, okay, maybe against men, but, I'm thinking of like Mommy Dearest and whatever happened to Baby Jane.
Pulling the Baby Jane card on me. Nice.
Yeah, where the women were, but that was against other women. Maybe they didn't want to show it against men. I don't know. You never know.
Well, I thought this movie was going to end up. I thought it was going to end up as a TV movie, and the market for TV movies is absolutely women. It's about 80% women. So, there you have it.
You also wrote another book called Redwood to Deadwood, a 53-year-old hitchhiking around America again. So you obviously did it once before you wrote the book?
Yeah, I added it up once, and I think even before I wrote Redwood to Deadwood, I think I've hitchhiked around 30,000 miles, and when I was a kid, all around the country, up and down, north, south, east, west, sideways, whatever, So I was just a couple of years ago, I was thinking, well, you never see hitchhikers around anymore. I wonder what it would be like to do that. So took 4 months off. Just wrote a book about what I found out there, and mostly tried to stay in the middle of the country, and got a lot of good reviews. It was I didn't even know this. See, that's one thing when you write a book, you kind of like learn a lot of things you didn't know before. Like I didn't know there was this category of books called adventure travel. So my book ended up on all these top 10 adventure travel book lists, and I was on NPR all the time, and I was a little bit of a hero then, but when I started writing about racial violence and black criminality wildly out of proportion, I found that my invites to NPR got a little bit fewer and further in between.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. It's not a very popular topic. I'm going back to the hitchhiking thing. You didn't feel unsafe hitchhiking?
No, that was the thing. I was out, I stayed off the freeway, so I was out in the middle of the country. I mean, I started in Colorado, and I went up through Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Iowa, and Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana, and I didn't feel unsafe, and the people who picked me up didn't feel unsafe. I mean, in Iowa, I got picked up by like 5 rides in a row were women.
Wow. Yeah,
and so I didn't bring it up. I didn't encourage people to talk about the safety part of it. Some people did, but I didn't really go there. But people would invite me to their houses. I mean, the very first ride I got was a guy in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. He wants to take me home to spend a couple days with his family. I said, you better call your wife first, see if she minds you bringing home some hitchhiker you just met. So she put the kibosh on that plan pretty quickly. But it was met a lot of great people, places where in this country where you have to go 150 miles to get to a Walmart. These are people that are like fixing their own roof in the morning. In the afternoon, they go out and, do DNA testing on their cattle. In the evening, they'll go out in the garage and put a new transmission in their car. Very self-reliant, very hardworking, very solid people out there.
I think these were the people that were the forgotten people of America that largely supported
This is the
Trump.
backbone of the whole enterprise, man.
Yeah, because when you get to either coast, the whole politics and culture changes. I've been through the Midwest a few times, and you're right, it's very different. They're very kind of...
there are people out there paying in restaurants with a check.
Yeah. Or I'll get you next time. They have a tab going at the local coffee shop or something.
You walk into a 7-Eleven and somebody goes, "Hey, how you doing?" You look around, you go, "Oh, I think they're talking to me."
It's too bad because I think America used to be like that. I think the whole of the country used to be like that. But
well, you can still find. I guess I still found it, and I found there's lots and lots of places. It kind of ties into my new stuff in that, or more recent stuff. I mean, I know what living in California, then taking this 4-month hitchhiking trip around the country. It kind of helped me set the bar for what is normal. And then I came back to the East Coast, to where I was born and raised in a little town called Wilmington, Delaware. 65% black now. And this city is just one chocolate mess. High crime, loud, just everything they touch around here turns to hell. And so it's kind of an interesting contrast.
So let's talk a little bit about your book. You've got Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, and you've got White Girl Bleed a Lot. Where did the titles come from? Was that something that you read or something someone said?
Yeah, in both cases, something someone said. So White Girl Bleed a Lot comes from Milwaukee. And it was the 4th of July, 50 to 100 black kids on video go into a convenience store and loot the place. They take, beer, groceries, candy, and they go to a park just a few blocks away where there's just a couple of white kids having a 4th of July picnic. They beat the hell out of these kids. At one point, a black woman stands over another white woman, points down to the ground, and kind of motions to her friends to check this out, and says, "White girl bleed a lot." Everybody thought that was very funny.
Yeah, except for the white girl. And what about the other one? Don't make the black kids angry.
Well, that's from Kansas City. Kansas City, Missouri. And so in Kansas City, Missouri, the entertainment district there, I mean, every big city has one, right? All the nice restaurants and movie theaters and a big park. Well, that's called Country Club Plaza. In Kansas City, over the last 5 years, there have been dozens of occasions where large groups of black people go to Country Club Plaza. They create enormous amounts of violence, mayhem, property destruction, stop traffic, destroy property, fight police, all on video. And so the former mayor of Kansas City, his name is Emmanuel Cleaver. He's now kind of a big dog in the Black Caucus. And so he was visiting his former mayor town, and they put a microphone in his face, and they said, "Well, we're thinking about putting a curfew on the Country Club Plaza because of all this violence." And that's when the mayor said, "No, let's not." The former mayor said, "Let's not do that. All that's going to do is make a lot of black kids angry."
Did you have a personal experience with black on white violence that kind of inspired you to do all of this?
Well, what inspired me to write the book was my brother and I were doing a talk show in Wilmington, Delaware. My brother is a liberal. I am not. So I saw this story out of Philadelphia, from South Philadelphia High School. They took 13 Asian kids to the hospital in one day. And you read the story, it's like, what happened to those Asian kids? And they kind of said, well, they might have gotten to a little this, a little that. And 13 went to the emergency room in one day. And, that's normal. So, but if you live anywhere around here, South Philadelphia High School is a black school. And just a smattering of Asian new immigrants. So the immigrants, for years, every day, they were subject to threats, harassment, violence. Their parents were getting beat up. This is every day. They would go to the black principal, the black superintendent, and they would say, "Hey, you gotta, what's going on? Can't you help us?" And they said, "No, you have to learn how to get along with black people." And after this thing kind of broke, the superintendent was whispering to the reporters, and so was the principal, that we think the Asian students are kind of provoking the black people. That's what's really causing all this violence against them. And so after this broke, the principal put out a flyer and gave it to all the Asian students, like how not to provoke black people into violence against you. I mean, it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. And I've done enormous amount of documentation, enormous amount of reporting on black violence in black schools, against white students, against teachers, against neighbors. Nobody's learning in these schools. I'm telling you that right now.
Why do you think the blacks pick on the Asians? Why are they thinking they're an easy target?
Well, the Asian. I like talking about black on Asian crime and violence in general, not just at this one school. And in San Francisco, they did a headline in the Examiner. They said, "Black on Asian violence, our dirty little secret." The police department did a study up there of like 500 robberies and assaults on the streets of San Francisco. They found out like 85% of them were black on Asian. And so they actually they found somebody who was convicted of doing one of these robberies, and they asked him that question. This guy just got out of prison like a couple weeks before, and they, "Hey, what's up with all this black on Asian violence?" And he said what a lot of people know to be, part of their life experience now, which is Asians are perceived to be soft and successful, so they won't fight back, and they have a lot of money. Enormous amount of black on Asian violence all over this country, a lot of different forms.
Well, I was wondering if part of it was just simply jealousy, because the Asians have come here and have largely been very successful, like the model immigrants. They sort of make the blacks look bad in a way, because they can't use that white privilege excuse with the Asians.
I happen to know a lot of Asians, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, and half of them hardly speak English. They all work 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day. I know a person that hardly speaks English that sells life insurance. She's very successful at it.
Yeah.
She can't speak English. But here's the thing: what I don't do in my books and videos, I don't really do a lot of causes and solutions, because to me, well, first of all, a lot of people don't even acknowledge this problem exists, and I don't do causes because that's a deflection, and I don't do solutions because the solutions are kind of obvious. I mean, if somebody's punching you in the face, for like every 10 seconds for like a half hour, I mean, how long would it take you to figure out a solution to that problem?
Exactly.
How long?
About 2 seconds. Right.
Yeah, it was like, hey, would you quit punching me in the face? I mean, I don't understand why that's so complicated.
Well, you punch back. That was one of the things that
that's even better. Thanks.
That was one of the things I noticed in several of the videos that you've posted, is that there were instances where the black guys were beating up on the white guys and the white guys wouldn't fight back. There was one that sticks in my head. It looked like it was a subway platform, and 5 or 6 black guys came and started pounding on a white guy and girl that were just walking along. I don't know if you remember that one.
You know what? So far, I've narrowed this down to about 100 of my videos. Go ahead.
Okay.
That's my world.
Well, and I don't know if it was in the United States or not. It looked almost like it could have been in England or something, or in Europe. But anyways, they're walking along and they just beat the shit out of this guy. He's bloody. He loses his shirt in the fight. And then then they run off. The black kids run off. And then you see the cops running right after them, maybe 50 yards later. But never once did I see the white guy throw a punch. I mean, they were beating his girl. She was throwing more punches than he was.
I understand that. I see a lot of that. And here's the fact. I mean, the fact of the matter is, on my YouTube channel, I get thousands of comments every day, right? And there's always 5 or 10 a day. The guy will say, you know what, I'm a tough guy. That ever happened to me. You better believe I'd be out there, doing this, doing that. I'd kick the crap out of all 20 of those people. Well, you know what? Not everybody's a tough guy, and that's a plain fact. Some guys can handle that. Some guys can't. Maybe it's a larger issue about how guys are being raised by women not to do this stuff. I don't know, but I try not to do too much. I don't blame the victims on my channel. Every once in a while, though, I do ask a victim to take responsibility for the situation that they're in. Like if you're a white person who moves into a black neighborhood, bad things happen to you. And my attitude is like, why did you move there? Why did you move your family there? I mean, are you suicidal? Are you blind? Are you delusional? I mean, white people in black neighborhoods are targets.
The Asians, too. I mean, the whole thing with the Koreans in Compton, when the riots broke out about Rodney King. A lot of them, when they came here, that's the only place they could afford to live.
One of the worst stories in my book, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, comes out of Rochester, New York. This is like 6-7 years ago. They started bringing in refugees from Burma and Nepal. Okay, these are very humble, family-oriented, God-fearing, hardworking people, right?
Right.
Very quiet. They moved 5,000. The minute they got off the plane, they put them in the ghetto of Rochester. The minute they got off that airplane, every single one of them was subject to harassment, threats, violence, burglary, murder. This went on for years before the local newspaper looked around and figured out something really bad was happening. And when they finally ran a story on it, the story was they spent half the time apologizing because, well, hey, I think we kind of noticed that. Well, it's hard not to notice that the black people were responsible for this enormous amount of violence. Then they went to the former police chief, a black guy, and they said, what's up with this? He said, well, they're new immigrants. They'll get used to it.
Get used to it.
I don't know. They'll get used to it. This is happening to Asians all over the country. The little Asian shopkeepers, right? And and they have little storefronts, or maybe people from India that come here to work. They're targets of home invasion robberies. Koreans with their stores in Compton, like you just mentioned. And there's a lot of that.
The subtitle of your Don't Make the Black Kids Angry is The Hoax of Black Victimization and Those Who Enable It. So when you say those that enable it, you're talking about the liberal politicians and the black police chief and the one who actually said, don't make the black kids angry, those people, right?
Yeah, but I really focus even more so on the reporters, editors, TV, radio, newspaper. I show the enormous difference between what they say happened and what really happened. And, thank God for YouTube. Thank God for people, all these people that are involved in the crime, whipping their cameras out. Maybe a reporter will say, well, we have 50 teens had a fight with a couple of other teens. And, this just happened. Okay, this just happened a couple weeks ago in Philly. A couple of dozen, according to the initial reports in the local media, some teenagers were having a snowball fight. Then they took their little frolicking downstairs in the subway, and they continued it there. And they had a video, but it was all blurred out. But I got a copy of a video that was not blurred out, and we could hear the audio. And it was about 20 black people attacking a couple of white kids in the subway. And it was a much, much more sinister, much nastier, much more dangerous of an encounter. And it wasn't a fight. It was a pure episode of black mob violence against some white kids. And the local media just absolutely can't get their mind around how often that happens and how terrible it is when it does happen.
Okay, so those who enable it, I know you said you don't like to get into the why, but I'm going to ask anyways. Why would there be this giant cover-up throughout the media that they're trying to downplay all the black on white violence and black on Asian violence?
I just don't know. I mean, someday we'll put some of these clowns on a psychiatrist's couch and we'll ask them if mommy and daddy loved them enough when they were kids. And so I don't do the why, but I do the how exhaustively. And I just keep showing over and over how these newspaper reporters, TV people, they just are in such denial, deceit, and delusion about what's going on. They're actually enabling it. And by doing that, they're putting a lot of people in danger by giving a false picture of what really happens in your town.
Well, certainly Obama didn't help. I mean, I think he enabled as much of it as anybody as a president. I mean, I think he totally failed on Ferguson. He totally failed on Baltimore. He turned these cases into civil rights issues by sending Eric Holder in there when they weren't civil rights issues at all. It was simply a police officer shooting a criminal who attacked him. And it got completely twisted around. I think he took the same line as the media when he refuses to say radical Islamic terrorist. It was unbelievable the amount of, like you said, deceit with him and with the media. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say there was a bigger agenda than, just people being stupid and in denial.
We have so many facts. We don't have to worry about conspiracies. So when you talk about Obama, to their credit, they're not hiding anything, right? It's like Obama's administration, top to bottom, they were the most race-conscious group of people that have ever held power in this country. They saw everything through the lens of race. Right. Obama used to give speeches all the time talking about how black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. He gave that speech in Dallas when the 5 cops were killed. Yeah, he was speaking at their funeral. He reminded everybody of the existence of white racism that's causing so much problem in this country. And so, you talk about the Attorney General talking about all these black people in prison for no reason whatsoever. You talk about the EPA that talks about environmental racism. At the military academies, they were teaching white privilege. The Department of Education and Department of Justice sends teams out all over the country into school districts, because if there's any disparity between white kids and black kids in performance or discipline, there's only one reason only for that, and that is white racism. I mean, this is top to bottom. The story of black victimization is just, I call it the biggest hoax of our generation. When I look at it, I don't see black people being victimized by white people. I see it the other way around. And where white people, the crime rate, black on white, is 20, 30, 1,000 times greater than white on black.
Well, I think if blacks are the victim of anything, they're the victim of the socialist experiment, starting back with LBJ, where, let's just give them welfare, let's give them housing, let's give them all of this stuff we feel bad for 400 years of oppression. And what they've done is they've created this whole society of there's no motivation for these people to get off the welfare rolls and go to work and make themselves a better person. Angry, a lot of it is single mothers, and it's 5 generations now. If there's going to be a victim to blame, I would blame them. However, it's up to the individual, I think, to pull themselves out of that. Certainly not every black person in America lives in the hood, and there have been many successful black people in this country. I think they could be considered victims by that, but I'm not suggesting that that's an excuse.
I'm so glad you used that word socialism, because when we look at the predominant narrative affecting black people, it's a collective narrative, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, black people are going to be this is going to be affected by that. I just did a video yesterday. The cop sent me a video from Chicago. There's a story in Chicago now where some group is insisting that cops are picking on black people in Chicago who ride bicycles. And so everybody's like really looking at this paradigm of collectivism, and we know the damage collectivism has done. I mean, we've seen it over the last 100 years. You talk about depriving people of motivation, all that good stuff. And if black people are just sitting around waiting for Jesse or Al Sharpton to come save them, I mean, God, no wonder everybody's in such a mess.
Well, those guys, not only are they not going to save them, they're using them for their own power, for their own political gain. The black people in the ghetto on the welfare rolls, they're the pawns to Jesse and Al, and even to some extent Obama.
One of the reasons I don't do the causes and the solutions is because what I write about is so terrible and so awful. This violence black on white, black on old. I mean, there's an enormous amount of black on old white people violence, including raping old white ladies. Okay, I have files on this. I write about it, make videos about it. This is nasty business.
That's disgusting.
And so everybody wants to turn their eyes to it, and all of a sudden, like I learned this with my brother, right, the liberal, on the radio. We're talking about this on the radio. He'll talk about anything except the violence. He'll want to talk about, well, Colin, what happened in 1492 when Columbus sailed the ocean blue? Or, Colin, don't we need more midnight basketball? They'll talk. That's a one. It's like they want to talk about everything except the problem. Causes, solutions, no. I want to talk about this problem, because once people understand what the problem is, I mean, we'll figure out the solutions, and we'll figure out the solutions in a hurry. And also in a hurry, we'll understand that the causes don't really mean that much, do they? I mean, causes to me are just excuses.
Well, yeah, it's true. But it does sort of help sometimes if you can find the cause to find the problem and then find the solution.
There's a million causes. I've heard, I'm the cause whisperer. No one's heard more causes than I have. I promise you. There's a million of them. I mean, brain chemistry, diet, religion. Colin, we ought to get the black preachers out there to solve this problem. No, the black preachers are the ones causing the problem. They're the ones out there. It's amazing the stuff that you hear from a pulpit at a black church. There's a lot of deflection. And you don't really hear conservatives talk about this either that much, because they're not, everybody's just kind of the third rail. Nobody wants to touch it. And conservatives are just afraid of it. I mean, conservatives are saying, well, we create more jobs, that'll solve everything. Well, if that were the case, why weren't black people upset when their their environmental counterparts inside the Democratic Party were killing jobs or pipelines or housing projects? I mean, they killed jobs by the tens of thousands. I've never heard a peep out of one of these national black leaders like Van Jones going, hey, black people need those jobs. So I think that jobs thing is kind of a hoax too.
The conservatives are afraid because they've been called racist for years anyways, and then I don't think they want to add to it by getting involved in this. This is just going to perpetuate it even more.
Thomas Sowell defined a racist as any conservative winning an argument with a liberal.
That's about right. Which brings me to a question. Certainly you must take some flack for what you're putting out. You must get a lot of hate mail, emails, threats, stuff like that. Am I correct in assuming
I get threats. I get very specific threats. But I don't worry about them. But I tell you what the overwhelming reaction is. And for every one threat or obscenity, there are hundreds of people who say, Colin, we're glad somebody's just talking about this, without racism, without rancor, without apologies. Because I just like say, hey, this is happening. I don't give people a little hook into having people say they want to debate. I'll go, okay, I'll debate. How do you debate a fact? I mean, how do you debate that on this thing on the subway where 20 black people rampaged through the subway and beat up a bunch of white people? How do you debate the fact that black on white murder is so wildly out of proportion to white on black murder? How do you debate that? That's not a debatable thing. Somebody wanted to say, hey, we need more midnight basketball. I don't have any interest in debating that. I mean, that's not my thing. But a lot of people are just kind of relieved that because there's a lot of people that are victims of this black violence and black criminality, whether in school, in their home, and they all, they pick up the paper every day and they see that black people are the victims. And they're going, hey, wait a minute. Me and my family and I and people I know, we're the victims of it. We're not the ones creating it. So a lot of people are very kind of relieved about that.
So how long have you been doing the YouTube videos? How long have you had your channel up?
I'll tell you what, I love YouTube. I love video now because I'm supposed to be a hotshot writer, right? And anyway, so I just started putting things on YouTube. It's like, okay, I'll just put a video up there just for the heck of it. I didn't know anything about anything. All of a sudden, I looked down there and I had 1,000 subscribers. And I'm thinking, well, what does that even? I don't even know what that means. So I started learning about YouTube, and I've been doing a lot of YouTube for about 2 years, and I've been kicked off a couple times. And but I just keep moving. My followers and subscribers just keep moving with me, so it's not that big of a deal.
You got kicked off YouTube. What reasons did they give you for kicking you off?
Well, here's the one reason you can get kicked off of YouTube: if you violate community standards.
Well, what the hell does that mean?
That means if somebody writes a letter to YouTube and the wrong person gets it at the right time, that means you're going to lose your channel.
Oh, is this the old, my feelings were hurt by this video,
yeah,
so therefore
100%. Yeah. It's like Colin, Colin, he's demonized, all these people, like they just generalize. I always say, you said I said this, but I didn't really say that. So could you when you say I said something, can you put quotes around it? Because I'm just playing it straight. I'm saying, listen, this is happening. I'm not going around calling people devils or anything. But I'm not afraid to look at it and tell people what's going on, that there's this enormous black on white hostility, and it's mainstream. And so YouTube, there's a lot of things YouTube can do to you. They can demonetize your videos, right? So you can't make money on them, or they can kick you off. So I've had all those things happen to me a couple times. But I just keep making videos.
I did subscribe to your channel, and I see when you open up YouTube and you get the suggestions from people you subscribed. This one is the new video, and they pop up. You're popping up all the time. How many videos do you make in a day?
I will produce 2 or 3 videos a day.
Wow.
I could do 200 or 300 a day. But I'm always trying to connect the dots, right? And so I'm just trying, if when I see a case of black on senior violence or murder, I'll say, listen, this is how, if this were just one thing by itself, it wouldn't really matter, would it? But then I said, well, look at this playlist, because this is not isolated. This is happening a lot here, and here. And, and the reporters are just absolutely, the same reporters who go to a Black Lives Matter rally and will put their microphone in somebody's face and let the leaders of Black Lives Matter just tell fairy tales about black victimization when there is actual victimization, racial hostility expressed in violence. Reporters look at it and go, what, Colin, race didn't have anything to do with that. Okay, so that's why my channel exists, to kind of expose that.
So how do you find all this material, all the videos and things?
Oh, man, I have so many people that send me stuff. You know who sends me the most stuff? Cops.
I'm not surprised.
So many cops out there. So many cops feel like when I talk to the cop, they always say the same thing. Things are a lot worse than people think they are. And Colin, you're the only one showing that's what it is. The cop, you talk to a cop, Find out where their mom lives or dad lives or their sisters or brothers live. Find out if their cops even let their moms go to eat lunch in a certain part of town. They don't do it. If a cop, I know cops, if they hear their mom is going to eat in a certain part of town, they will get in their car and put their mom in the car and say, "Get the hell out of here." So the cops are so I get a lot of, people send me stuff and it always begins the same way. Colin, did you see this? Colin, did you see that? Like I got 25 emails today, 25 in the last 3 hours. Last night in it'll be up on my channel in the next 24 hours. Last night in North Carolina, a guy's just getting gas. A white guy and his wife, older white guy and his wife are getting gas at a gas station in North Carolina. A black woman with a hammer comes up, starts beating his boat, beating him. You see the picture, the bloody face. And she's telling the guy, "I don't like fancy white people." And, see, I don't even require that if a black person is going to start beating a white person with a hammer, some people say, "Well, Colin, you don't have any proof that's racially motivated." I mean, there's no note, there's no nobody's holding a sign saying "down with hunky." But what we do have is this enormous pattern that's wildly out of proportion that keeps repeating all over the country. That's the proof. And that's why I tell people there's something really weird going on. I mean, I don't even worry about gas stations. I mean, you turn on TV, right? Turn on MSNBC, CNN. I mean, just the other day, there was a mainstream comedian named D.L. Hughley. He's on with Chris Cuomo in the morning, and he's talking about Rudy Giuliani. And he said, "Nobody cares what an old white dude thinks." That was like the punchline. That was very funny. So this racial hostility now is mainstream. I mean, on the floor, right before the show, somebody sent me an email. I'm looking at it right now from Minnesota, the House of Representatives in Minnesota. A white chick stands up there and starts complaining about old white men who don't pay enough attention to people of color. How do people, I don't understand how people get away with saying these things, these really vitriolic racial comments, and then just pretend like you look around and just pretend like she didn't just say what she just said. There's an enormous amount of that.
You're reminding me of that one who was from the Democratic National Committee who said, "My job is to shut white people up."
Oh, man.
You remember that one?
Okay, so, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So if you and I go through that, how many hundreds of those could we find that have happened in the last year? I mean, you think about the Democratic primary last year, people really who weren't paying attention to this, don't really see this. But Bernie and Hillary spent 25% of their time talking about black victimization. It was almost like they were at an auction, right? One day Hillary would say, "I'm going to spend $10 billion on black people." The next day Bernie would raise it until Hillary finally came out. The highest number I saw, she was going to spend $200 billion to fix this whole black thing in America. And that's what it was like. I mean, they were talking about why all these black people are in prison for no reason, why black people get sent to prison and white people don't. Because we all know black people and white people commit the same amount of crimes, except cops pick on black people, let white people go. That's a fairy tale, 100% fairy tale, which is accepted in the mainstream.
I was introduced to you and your channel by Jesse Peterson when I saw his show, The Fallen State, and you were a guest on the show. I got interested in what you were saying, and so I looked you up, and that's how we kind of found you. When you were on that show, your topic was pretty much about a race war. You were talking to him about basically the same thing we've been talking about. What was your take about being on his show? How did you like it?
I'm a big fan of Jesse Lee Peterson. I've been calling him the most important man in America for a couple of years now, because Jesse, in my mind, was among the first, but he's also the one who speaks the most clearly about the level of black on white hostility in this country and how white people have no idea it's happening. Your average white person, I would put you and I in that category, by the way. I mean, we're looking inside of ourselves. We're trying to find that one last molecule of racism that we can extinguish, right? Black people are not having that conversation. They're not looking around when they say something like they don't like white people suck, white people are always messing with black people. They're not looking over their shoulder to see if they've offended anybody. And so white people and black people are experiencing race in a much different way now. Black people are having a very, they'll let you know. They don't think white people, it's like, it kind of reminds me of that book that was out a couple years ago. Remember that book, He's Just Not That Into You? Well, if we were going to write another book, it would be black people are just not into white people in this country. They're not. There's a lot of hostility. Okay. And so that's what I really like about Jesse, how he talks about that. He inspired me to document a lot of it. And I'm happy that he's spending a lot more time on Fox News now.
The other thing that I liked about is that he talks about anger and about having to get rid of the anger, that there's no racism. It's just about anger. He brought up a lot of very good points.
People say, Colin, what's your solution? I say, I don't know. Go ask Jesse Lee Peterson. He's a man of God. He knows how to get this done. But please don't tell me there's some kind of complicated Rube Goldberg scheme that you want me to know about, because I promise you, it's already been tried 100 times and it's failed 1,000,000 times.
Well, are you suggesting then there is no solution?
I'm suggesting that whatever solution there is, it's going to be the Jesse Lee Peterson personal get your act together solution, instead of the let's have another social program with lots more midnight basketball, because that's just ruinous.
Yeah, well, that hasn't worked. I think it is up to the individual to kind of pull themselves up. Certainly everyone else has done it. Do you have this issue with any other races? Are Asians attacking black people?
No, it's not a question of I have an issue with them. It's a question of whether they have an issue with me. I don't have any problem. You ever had any problem walking in Asian neighborhoods? No, so.
Well, how many Asians are attacking black people?
You know what? It's like, how many unicorns are there out there? I don't know.
I've met a few black people from Africa who immigrated first generation. They were doing fine. And they couldn't understand what the problem was with the American.
There was a novelist. There's a novelist from Africa on NPR last year. Her last name's Adichie. I forget her first name. And she wrote a book about her time at Yale, a novel. And she talked about how when she got here, she was in a class at Yale, and one of the white students mentioned the word watermelon. A couple of dozen black students got all fiery and huffy about this white student mentioned the word watermelon, and then that's racist, and they wanted to know why she wasn't all angry about it. And she said, why should I be angry? I like watermelon. And Adichie, if you hear her speak, it sounds like she went to Eton and Oxford her entire life, right? Perfect English. But anyway, the punchline, here's where the story gets weird. The punchline of her story is, after about a year of being in America, she totally picked up on the whole black anger, black victimization thing. And now she's like happy to tell NPR that she understands the whole thing and she's down with the cause now. And, so that's how that worked out.
She got brainwashed, it sounds like.
No, she's like all down with it now.
The last question I want to ask you is about your other book, which we didn't mention, was The Knockout Game. What exactly is the knockout game? I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
I define the knockout game as somebody comes up and beats the hell out of you just for the hell of it. And so for a while, and I'm giving credit for being the first one to really document this, especially out of St. Louis. For a while, there was a lot of, they would call it the game. They'd hit somebody and they'd start yelling knockout. And a lot of reporters, the New York Times, New Yorker types, they like to define it very narrowly to kind of define it right out of existence. They'll say, well, Colin, according to the 1892 rules of convention at the knockout game convention held in London, that doesn't meet the criteria of the knockout game. Well, knockout game is somebody beating the hell out of you just for the hell of it. That's a black thing in this country. And it happens a whole lot. I document it a whole lot. So the knockout game was just that. It was just a book and a video, a long video, just one case after another. See, these are not academic tomes, right? Not a lot of not a lot of charts or numbers. It's just one story after another. One story of black on white, black on Asian, black on young, black on old violence. And if at the end of the violent encounter, somebody's pockets get rifled, that really doesn't change kind of the nature of what just happened.
How's your book doing? You said it was a #1 bestseller, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry?
Yeah, the way Amazon works is they put you in you get 3 categories, right? So they shift them around, but my book is in African American studies and media studies. and I've dominated both of those categories since the book came out. So I get a lot of good, a lot of good reviews from people like Thomas Sowell, Alan West, lots and lots of people buy it. Lots of people get good reviews on Amazon. But I'm telling you, because I like writing books. I wish I could write books all day long. That's what I would do. But I would tell you, you could spend, even say you write a book really quickly, right? So let's say you already have all the material. You just got to sit down and do it. That's a couple months at a minimum. And if you're starting from scratch, that's a year. And okay, you get a little buzz on it. But if you want to get a real visceral reaction, at least on my topic, you really have to show people what's happening, because people there's such a mountain of denial. I find that video, this reality, is really helping chip away at this denial. So love the books also, and the videos support the books and vice versa. Tell you what, you ought to do a YouTube channel if you don't have one already.
Well, we do have one. The problem is YouTube isn't a great platform for us because we're audio only, and people want to come on YouTube and see something. We batted the idea around or doing a full-blown studio thing like Jesse does, but there's two problems with that for this show. Number one, it's expensive, and number two, you got to get people to come to your studio. I've interviewed people from all over the world simply because you can hook up on Skype. The other thing is that I've seen people do these radio shows where they do like a split screen on Skype. Yeah. And I'm on one side and they're on the other side. I can't take that for a whole hour. It's like, those are okay on a news broadcast, kind of like like what you do. You're sitting at a desk and you got maybe a screen behind you, and now we're with Colin Flaherty. Hi, Colin. And, you're behind and we talk for a minute and then you go back to something else. But to do that for an entire hour, I don't know. I don't think I could watch it. I would have to watch.
Well, just for the benefit of your listeners, that I think there's an alternative to the way you describe the YouTube thing there. It doesn't have to be, it could be part of your show or not. But people do like shorter videos. 5-10 minutes is considered kind of long. But there's so much video that you can use because it's considered fair use. So much news coverage. And to me, if you're a conservative, that's really the conservative argument today is, look, here's what we're being told on one hand, and here's the real story on the other. And no matter what topic you're on, that would be, it's not that, by the way, you don't have to put your own mug on the video, by the way, you can just do a voiceover over some pictures, and that's a good way to start, because that reduces the level of complexity by about 100%. Because you don't need lights. All you need is a decent microphone, and you don't need a really cool camera. But that's what I used to do. Now I do the full thing. I do the full studio, and you don't need a whole bunch of people to do it.
Well, it looks like you're doing yours pretty much on your own. Do you have somebody producing it? Do you have somebody running a camera?
Yes, I have millions and millions of people that are behind, and crammed into my studios. But no, you get a little workflow going. So I have a camera and I know what I want to say. So I get in there and say it, and pop a video on there. Then I kind of like say, okay, hey, you just see that? Don't make the black, and I always have a little tagline, don't make the black kids angry, put a little music in there, maybe put a few other effects. But this is like video 101. This is not complicated stuff. But if you really have a good topic and you really kind of have a good focus, it's a big world out there. People will find you. You have a nice voice, you have a nice take on things. Hell, you'd be good on YouTube. Not something you'd have to do every day, but something definitely. I beg my friends to do this.
Well, thank you for the compliment. Like I said, YouTube, I'll think about it. I'll think about maybe how we can expand to video of some sort. But, this has started out as a live radio show a couple of years ago in Florida, and then it took off online, and so we're doing well on the podcast sort of formats and platforms. YouTube, people don't immediately think of YouTube for a radio show.
Well, again, I don't mean to badge you on this, but this is really for your listeners. It's like, if you took like a 5-minute segment of what we're talking about, boom, you put that on there on YouTube. Then you went into YouTube and you found some B-roll. Say, I use so much B-roll out there, say, of the riots in Baltimore, Milwaukee, Charlotte, New York. nasty business on film. So if you're talking about my topic, black on white violence and how people ignore and deny it, I mean, there's so much video out there on that. That would be your B-roll for listening to the video. And by the way, I hate to be vulgar about this, but you can actually make $1 or $2 on YouTube.
That was one thing I was going to ask you about, because we just started a Patreon page. Because what I want to do is I've gotten so many submissions for people who want to be guests on the show, people who want to play music, because we also do music features. I can't seem to get anybody. I've got one. I've had the page up for a week, and I got one guy who pledged $4. You have any, and I saw yours, and yours is doing a hell of a lot better, but you've got a big following on YouTube. Any suggestions for how to get that Patreon thing going? Yeah,
here's the thing. Again, I love talking about YouTube, so I'll expose a little bit of my business. So if you're going to do this as for a living, a professional, I mean, there's at least 4 ways to make money just on YouTube. Say, for example, one, if you have a YouTube channel and you turn on the monetization, that means, they're going to run little commercials. You've all seen them on YouTube, and you're going to make money on that. So for 1 million viewers, say you get 1 million a month, you're going to make anywhere from $700 to $1,500 off that million viewers.
Per month?
Yeah, per month.
Well, that's not bad.
Then I sell my books. People look at my channel and go, I got to read the books. That's the second source. Third source is I have merchandise, like cups, like cups and shirts. People buy those. One I come to think of it, there's 5 sources. The 5th one is something you call affiliate marketing, right? So I'm going to start doing more of this. If I mention like a book on the air, if I mention something on my channel, or if I mention a piece of self-defense equipment, I'll just say, hey, look at the link at the in the description of the show. Click on that link and you can get that holster or whatever. If they buy it from Amazon, you get a little chunk of that every time. And then the 5th one is Patreon. I love Patreon because every once in a while, I mean, if you see my videos, I don't make a big deal about it, right? I just have a little thing up there that says, hey, Patreon, if you want to help me out, support this channel, I just put a little banner up. People figure it out. So with your thing, all you'd have to do is say, hey, if you want to see more of this, you want to support what we're doing, go to my Patreon page at, patreon.com/Doug, Douglas /Douglas, or whatever it is. And everybody's starting to figure it out now that if they want alternative programming where you really get kind of an unvarnished version of the truth, they have to support it. People love to support these things. I get a ton of contributions to PayPal. I get people sending me stuff in the mail. They send me cigars. They send me this. They send me that. So I didn't know any of this when I started out on YouTube. Had I known that, I would have started it a long time ago.
Are you making a living doing this? Is this what you do, or do you do something else?
No, I'm a writer. I've been a writer for a long time. I also have a PR and marketing company. But for the last 10 years, I mean, I earn a living off my books, but YouTube has kind of supercharged that. And I probably make more money on videos than books now. And I'm not, and if I go into a room full of writers, I'll go to the front of the room and say, hey, people, I got a lot of notches on my belt. I know what the hell's going on in this world. Okay, boom, listen to me. But if I go into a room full of video people that know anything about video, I'm sitting in the back of the room going, hey, will somebody tell me what the heck's going on here? And so, but it's just interesting. That's all.
Listen, we've got to wrap this up. Let's do our goodbye section here. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that your YouTube's taking off because I think your message is important. And I don't think anybody was talking about it quite as well as you are doing it. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
What is your link? Tell people the link so they can come look at you.
I'm easy to find on, just go into a search engine and type Colin Flaherty YouTube. Boom, I'll pop up. I mean, you can follow me I do a lot of stuff on Twitter, on Facebook, but it's all kind of focused around the videos and the writing. Like I have a big article today. As we tape this, I have a big article in American Thinker today, and the article is called "Crime is the New Black Entitlement." So I still do a lot of writing and working on new books. So staying busy, easy to find.
Okay, Colin. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Douglas.
Well, that's about all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my very special guest, Colin Flaherty. This is Douglas Coleman saying goodbye.